Welcome to the Sports Entrepreneurs Podcast. I'm your host, Marcus Luer, and I'm excited to cross over today to Geneva, Switzerland to catch up with my good friend, Stephane Schindler of CAA 11. Welcome to the podcast, Stephane.
Welcome, Marcus, and thanks for the hosting.
No, look forward to this. We know each other for many years, so this is going to be a lot of fun talking about some of our, previous lives. And then, of course, we'll be digging deep into what CAA 11 is doing and all the amazing things, of course, here over the last few years. But let me quickly introduce you a little more to our listeners here who might not know you that well. So Stephane currently is a co-founder and a managing partner in CAA 11, the agency which represents UEFA and all the national team media rights and other commercial rights linked to the qualification matches UEFA has, as well, of course, as the big Euro, which obviously was just this year. And clearly we're going to spend a lot of time talking about what happened there and all the challenges around it. But Stephane has been in this industry for many, many years, all the way counting back to the mid-90s, starting there with Eurosport and Canal Plus, and then with several agencies, IMG and Lagardere. So we're going to touch on all this and going to hear the stories directly from Stephane. So Stephane, let's go back how it all sort of started. I guess doing your master degree and then starting here at Eurosport. Take us back to those times.
Yeah, thanks, Marcus. A long journey. Let's try to be as consistent as possible. So, hi, everybody. Thanks for this hosting. As you mentioned, I start my career in mid of the 90s. I was very lucky to start in a fantastic company named Eurosport. Mm-hmm. I start in a marketing position at Eurosport. And I effectively start as an intern at Eurosport.
Oh, wow.
Luckily at this time, it was a fantastic opportunity to jump on marketing and promotion activities of Eurosport France. At this time, developing all the relationship of Eurosport in the French world of sport. Right. It means that I try to develop many partnership with all the French federation and mainly the federation that Eurosports are working with in terms of broadcasting to try to do marketing operation and stuff like that. To be fair, it was one of my best journey and best time in this business. I was young and fresh and I have a lot of enthusiasm.
Yeah, I can imagine. Now that must have been quite early days for Eurosport as well, right? I mean, I have to admit, I didn't check when the company was founded, but mid-90s, they can't have been around that long. I mean, cable really just started, right? So
exactly.
It must have been really early days, right?
Exactly. It was the golden age of the cable, and Eurosports were at this time the leader by far of all sports cable channel in Europe. Yeah. At this time, it was only in Europe, obviously, Eurosport. Yeah. And the funny things of that, I start directly to learn all strategical and political interaction in this industry because Eurosport at this time were owned by both TF1, the network, the French network, and Canal Plus. Right. They have a joint venture in Eurosports, and I used to work for Eurosports France. It was a JV made by these two big companies to drive leading cable networks for sports in France. And it was very interesting to live that. And I have the chance to live with a lot of good people and helping me to deep dive in this industry. I will say in the sports broadcasting industry. To be fair,
the part I also like is what you said that you were an intern when you joined, and I've heard this so many times with other guests. There's so many who are now CEOs and running big companies, and they did start as interns. So I always say that out for our younger listeners here that don't take these things. They're serious, right? There are great opportunities to get into these kind of companies, and you might have just have to sweat it out a bit, but if you do a good job, then there is huge opportunities on the back of it. So you're another great example of that, of course.
Yeah, definitely. It will be definitely my my advice and my first recommendation to any young people who wants to work in this industry, let's be courageous and let's jump on every opportunity you could have in this industry. And I was really lucky in this sense because I have an internship. It was great, but on top of that, this internship was with a very, very strong brand and company. You know,
absolutely. So the learning you have, I'm sure, is huge, right? So you spent about 3 years there. I think you ended up as the head of promotion there at the end, and then I think from that I guess you ended up at Canal Plus as a, in a new role there as I guess what I see here is head of acquisition, right? So how did you then move on? I mean, you mentioned already that Canal Plus obviously was a shareholder in Eurosport. So how does that sort of transition then happen?
Yeah, you exactly touch base with the fact that TF1 and Canal Plus were shareholder of Eurosport. So obviously there was a very important link between the two companies. Right. And in the beginning of '98, before a very important year in France with the World Cup in France in 98, sorry, not 28, but 98. There was this opportunity to join Canal Plus sports department, which at this time were the biggest, one of the biggest, if not the biggest, sports broadcasting department in Europe. You know, with the Sky in the UK, I have to say it was a very, very strong entity. If you remember where you were already in this business at this time, Canal Plus were very, very strong and big buyer. Absolutely. So I have this opportunity thanks to the connection between Eurosport and Canal Plus, and I have also this opportunity to join, I will say, a new landscape, a new business, which is the sports business and the acquisition industry, sale and acquisition industry of this business. Totally different with promotion and marketing, but I learned the way a broadcaster were working during 3 years at Eurosport, and thereafter I learned a job, and my job were to develop my relationship with right holders in order to acquire at the best price for Canal Plus the rights of a major competition and small competition. Yeah. And the very interesting things at this time, it was that Canal Plus were at the crossroad of his life. It was just right after the golden age of Canal Plus, where the subscription and the growing up like hell. And it was a time where a full reorganization of Canal Plus, of this pay TV broadcaster start. It was one of the first, reorganization. And at this time, it was also the time where Canal Plus begins to make a lot of diversification in his activity, and one of these diversification were the creation of a sports business agency named Sport Plus at this time, which finally Sport Plus merged with Jean-Claude Darmon and UEFA Sports at this time. It's a long story, but coming back to my position, I joined Canal Plus in order to take over the acquisition position from Jérôme Valk. First of all, to work with Jérôme Valk.
I was just going to ask,
Exactly. He was my first boss at Canal Plus. He was the one for me, and I'm very thankful for that, Zim. But really, right after I joined Canal Plus, Jérôme left and to lead the Sport Plus agency. Owned by Canal Plus also, but lead that. And really, right after, I think few months after, it was this merger between Sport Plus and Jean-Claude Darmon and UEFA Sports. Yeah. So we called it, and in order to create what you knew about the Sports 5 company.
Correct.
So therefore, I was left on my own at Canal Plus because ultimately I was a broadcaster, and I was taking over the acquisition of the rights for Canal Plus, and it was fantastic, to be okay. I was perhaps a little bit young. I was perhaps a little bit inexperienced at this time. But the learning curve was amazing, and I had the chance to be able to negotiate and discuss and spend time with most, if not all, the major rights holder in sports in this industry. from the NBA to the UEFA to the French leagues and so on and so on. So
yeah, they all come running to you, right? Because you know that you have some money for them.
Also running to them, and it was a very, and I have to say, it's changed a little bit today, but at this time, this business of sports, what we name our media sports business, were very, very small and small business. Very limited number of people. And I remember because I will do this time the 22nd or 24th time in the Sportel, Monaco. And I have to say this time it was a very different one, very small. And you remember well, because you were also in this business, And so I spent 2 very exciting years at Canal Plus. Not enough, perhaps. But 2 years after I joined Canal Plus, I had the opportunity to join what is for me one of the biggest, if not the biggest, and definitely the historical sports agency, IMG, in Paris. And thanks again to my connection, I made in Canal Plus, because obviously IMG were representing a lot of rights holder, especially international rights holder, and obviously I create a lot of links with the IMG people, and in 2000 when Michel Grache, my good old friends that who run also a French Open, left IMG, he proposed me, say, hey guys, do you want to join IMG to replace me? And at this time, frankly, I say, no, I have to learn a lot again, and I can I have still a run at Canal Plus, so I will perhaps stay at Canal Plus. And after, 3 to 4 months, after I say politely, and I was not convinced about that, but I'd say no, he came back, and I had a very interesting meeting, and I remember that all my life with Mr. Masquelier, Michel Masquelier,
sure,
which is one of the most known executive in this industry. And he called me, say, I want to see you. So we have a very fantastic meetings discussing about all and nothings, and. To be fair, as he was one of the best salesmen in the world, managed to sell me the fact that I joined IMG. So I joined IMG.
You're excited, yes. Which is not difficult, right? I mean, I this is funny when I listen to you, because I've had these conversations many times when I hired other people, right, for TSA, and I always say, look, it's not hard for me to get you excited over the industry and what we're doing, right? It's going to be a bit harder when we start, salaries and other stuff. But I said to get you excited over what sports industry is about, if you like sports, that is the easiest part, because it is just such an amazing business, right? So I'm sure that's exactly what you heard from him talking about IMG and all the great things they were doing at that time, right?
Definitely, and I should have started by that. I am very lucky, and I feel still very lucky to have the chance to work in an industry that is a passion,
Yeah,
and
absolutely.
To be fair, when I start my last degrees in the university in France, I was make a pit stop, and I say, what do I want? Do I want to work in a finance, in marketing, whatever? And ultimately, I make myself clear. It made myself clear that I want to work and to be passionate by my work. And my 2 passions were the media and the sports. So ultimately, when you look about my career, I feel very lucky, because again. Okay, perhaps it's a lot of work. Definitely, as you mentioned, you need to give a lot of very strong message that it felt not like that. You work a lot, and each time you change, it's a new challenge. Yeah. It's a very difficult industry, but it's a passion, and my passion of sports is there from the beginning. So let's
talk a bit about IMG a bit. Yeah, you were the head of sort of media in France.
Exactly.
What does that mean? In this case now you're selling the rights, I'm assuming, right? Or
yeah, not only it was the beauty of the stuff, because when I was at Canal Plus, I only buy the rights for the broadcaster. So I was, let's say, at the end of the chain.
Yep.
And here with IMG, I discover every intermediation businesses in sports, and in media sports, because as you know, IMG is bigger than that. Yep. It's touch base with sponsorship, with licensing, with player agents, stuff like that. But I was focused on media. But in media, you have many things, So at this time, with my learnings at Canal Plus, also as a broadcaster, I try to develop production business. I develop also acquisition, for IMG, to develop new businesses for the right sales of IMG, but targeting the French rights holder. So typically, one of them is in my mind is France Gallo, the French horse racing authority that we bid with IMG to sell the rights, the international rights of the French horse racing authority in the world. Right. French horse racing and French horse racing in particular, there is very well-known competition, and we were very excited to develop that, for example, in Asia or in Middle East and stuff, place like that. And typically it's why my time at IMG were amazingly exciting, because every single days you are touching base with a new job. Right. One day you are meeting with a broadcaster and you have to sell him the portfolio of IMG. Is it the British Open, the Ryder Cups, or the Rugby World Cup? Yeah. And the day after, you spend your time with the French right holder, France Gallo, as I mentioned, or also the French leagues, and you try to convince them that the IMG network is the best network to sell the rights in the world. It.
Yeah, that's been my world for 25 years too. I love that. Exactly. Great stories.
It's why I perfectly understand. And sometimes during some period we spend a lot of time discussing together, and I perfectly understand what you are doing. And first of all, the difficulties of what are doing the agency, but also the excitation and ultimately that's an entrepreneur business. Okay, I was at IMG, I was an employee of IMG, but it was a pure entrepreneur business. You have to develop yourself. You don't wait that somebody is telling you what you have to do. You are moving on. Okay, you have part of your job which are focused. Okay, you need to sell the Rugby World Cup, the tennis tournament, or whatever. That's for sure. That's your main job. But ultimately, you have the freedom to develop your business and as largely as possible. So that was a very exciting journey of 6 years. And I have to say that it was the time when I learned the more. It was a time because, as I mentioned, we were touching base with a lot of things. You just mentioned to me that now you are involved a lot in esports. Yes. Definitely. And we can. It's not a secret that we can say. I don't think that in 5 years' time you were a very strong experts of esports. Absolutely. But you learn it. And again, and there is a common point in this work, which were everything's relating to the commercialization and creating value for sports rights holder. And I think it's something that I put in my head, and I think it was a. We always say it was better before and whatever. I don't say that. It's totally different. But I have to say it was really a golden age of these businesses. This golden age it was not only 5 or 6 years, but around 20 years, between 90s to 2010, something like that. But and after that, we will come to that. There was a consolidation of the market. But I have to say it was very exciting time because the rights holder, the sports rights holder, were very open about getting more money from their rights, and ultimately, as an intermediary, at this time you have not, the rights holder were not structured like they are today, and ultimately you can bring a lot of add value to the rights holder.
Yeah, totally. So you did obviously, as you said, it was huge learning there for 6 years, and then obviously the next big opportunity came knocking on the door with the Lagardere group. How did that work? Were you approached by Arnaud at Lagardere directly, or how did this how did you move over and started Lagardere Sports?
Okay, as I mentioned before, this is a small business and this is an opportunity business, and it's a business of men. And what's happened is one of my clients, which is today my partner in CAA 11, knocked on the door. It was Olivier Guiguet, and at this time he was working for Arnaud Lagardere, very close to Arnaud Lagardere, and he was working in the broadcasting / entertainment business of Lagardere. And at this time, it was in 2005 exactly, or 2006. Arnaud Lagardere wants definitely to develop an activity in the business of sports. But to be fair, I didn't know exactly what he was looking for. He was mixing player agent and sports with business of sports. As you know, it's really different. The sport is one side of the activity, and it's the side which is known by everybody. What's happened in a team and tournament of tennis or football matches. Okay, that's what is viewed by everybody. And on the back of that, in the backstage, you have the business people and the people who are making that possible. And at this time, they have not a clear idea, but they have Arnaud Lagardere have the feeling that he wants to develop an activity, a full activity from the group. So Olivier called me and say, he said, I think you are one of the best experts in this industry that I know. He didn't know a lot of people at this time in this industry, but ultimately I have to say we had a very strong relationship. He was my client at IMG when he was at France Gallo, the French horse racing authority. And he told me, join me, and we start from zero. We have nothing. We have 2 offices, and we have to develop this activity for the group. And this group is a listed company, is a very strong listed company, and we will have a lot of support from the top shareholders, Arnaud himself. And so thereafter I met with Arnaud. The feeling were very good, and in mid 2006 I decided, and it was not an easy. It's never an easy decision, but I decided to leave IMG. Leaving a lot of friends, very good friends, and a very, very strong company, to jump in a new boat, starting from scratch and trying to develop that. And
I remember that.
Exactly, and it was in 2006, and honestly, in that it was the time where Lagardere were starting to look and monitor every opportunity of acquisition in the business. And when I arrived, I say, okay, guys, is it not possible to start by an organic growth before, and to try to do small business there and there, in order for the company to learn, to have a learning curve of this activity. But it was not possible. It was a listed company, and this company needs to have some things big quickly. And it's where the Sports 5 acquisition happened. Lagardere were monitoring that, and then I arrived just at the middle of that. And I have to say, it was very, very exciting for me, because it was a new business for me. It was a merger and acquisition business, So I joined meeting with bankers and lawyers and advisors, and discussing about the overall strategic in the next 10 or 20 years of this company. And it was not an easy one to do, but so meaning I swap from an operational business at IMG, very exciting and enthusiastic, to much more corporate activities of merger and acquisition. Again, it was, you have done so yourself. It's very exciting when you look about some company. You try to deep dive in the company, even if you know this company from outside. If you have business relationship with this company, this is not the same. And when I joined Lagardere, I was the first employee of Lagardere Sports.
Right. Okay.
Because ultimately, Olivier were still in Lagardere Active, the entertainment, media and entertainment branch.
Right.
Olivier and I, we were the first two employees of that. And we have to build everything. So in Lagardere, we were building a corporate structure, developing acquisition and merger. So not easy discussion always, because it's a different world, a corporate world. It's a different even language. And I was the counterpart of the rights holder, the company. And you remember we have a lot of discussion at this time. It was closer to 2008,
Yep.
But during two to 3 years, we were building a portfolio. Instead of building a portfolio of rights, we were building a portfolio of company. Yeah. And at this time, Lagardere buy out Sports 5, IEC in sports, thereafter World Sport Groups, and few other smaller companies that we had the mission to integrate into the Lagardere galaxy. Yeah. And obviously, that's not the most easiest things, but we try to manage that. And in the meantime, on the same time that we were running and developing a very strong relationship with top premium rights holder, having discussion with the UEFA, the WF, the IOC, to try to create also an activity of relationship between those big rights holder with a big company like Lagardere. So I remember a few meetings of Jacques.
Lots of things, plates in the air, you're juggling there, that's for sure. Let's dive a little bit. We'll stick to Lagardere Sports for a bit. Now, on the acquisition front here, so again, I just sort of some of the numbers I roughly remember. I think the Sport 5 acquisition was not far off from $1 billion, even, right? If I remember, sort of in the
less than $1 billion, but
yeah, not far off, right?
It was it was 800 something.
800, okay. I think World Sport, and then I think the numbers which were reported was sort of like in the 150 million range. IEC, I can't remember quite what it was, but there's, let's take it all in. Let's put a number there, about $1 billion, maybe all in, maybe more even, right? If you take all the companies, so that's a substantial amount of money.
Exactly,
not far off, right?
It was the cost for a company like Lagardere to enter and to jump into these businesses, right, and to be quickly a player, Right. And especially in listed company, time is money. And with this acquisition, it was a way to gain time, gain years, gain months, and then years. Sure. And my idea at the beginning, and I was wrong, is that you can start slowly and you can grow organically your company. But for a company, I don't say for everybody, but as an entrepreneur, I prefer to start slowly and grow on my own. But for a big company who are in the stock exchange and who need to deliver every quarter yes, numbers to their shareholders and to the market, you need to go quick and fast. And the only way to do that is merger and acquisition. Yeah. Thereafter, you can grow organically. It's what we've done with the contract of the IOC, for example, where we made a fantastic contract with the IOC for the Olympics 16, where we get the rights of the media rights there. But ultimately, it won't have been possible if we don't have the structure on the back, and the structure were Sports 5. So ultimately, that's the lesson of that. At this time, I feel I was wrong to say or to feel that we need to go slowly and carefully. But in the meantime, thereafter, it was, and we'll come back to that at the end of my journey with Lagardere. It was difficult to entertain both world, the financial world with the stock exchange and the sports world where you have a different timing.
So there's different cycles of how all these revenues go up and down. Exactly. Yeah. The part which is interesting, actually, if you might remember this, right? I think TSA almost would have been potentially part of this. I think when we were talking, actually, was when you were looking at World Sport Group and at us at that time. And
exactly. I will not deny that.
No, it's all good. We had some good conversations.
But it's true that we have and I remember a lot of very interesting meetings we had together in Kuala Lumpur in particular.
Yeah, exactly. So, World Sport was a bigger agency at that time, obviously, with some big rights, AFC and others. Yes. So, I know I can see why you went with them, not with us. So that's all good. We won't go too deep into all that stuff. But what I'd love to talk a bit about, that is, of course, and again, lots of it's been written about, and I've had other, colleagues on the podcast here where we dissected, a bit what went right or what didn't go right for Lagardere, right? I mean, we all know it was, recently sold, whatever it was, 2020 there, right? For, again, reported number of about 110 million or so. So let's say, somewhere in this whole process, 90% of value was somewhat lost, right?
Exactly.
And please go ahead.
The answer to that is implementation. Yeah. Integration and implementation.
Right.
And to be fair, I will never challenge anybody, and I'm very respectful of both partners, shareholders, and colleagues. But ultimately, the failures that Lagardere Sports had is integration and implementation. We will not give, and ultimately, we didn't take the time to properly integrate, and neither implement the acquisition that Lagardere have made.
Yeah.
And that's one of the main reasons for me with Backstage. After that, there is a lot of other reasons that I don't want to discuss about, because
sure.
You obviously, I left. I decided to leave Lagardere in 2010, and at this time, the turnover of Lagardere and the benefits of Lagardere Sports were close to 60 to 70 millions a year, which was a very strong company.
Yeah.
But having said that, shareholders are always right. It's like referees. And ultimately, I disagree with the new strategy that Lagardere Groups wants to implement into sports, but I fully respect it. And ultimately, I was just an employee of this company, even if I was in the backbone of this company, deciding a lot of things. But the only thing I can say I disagree with some element of the strategy, and I have to leave. And one of these elements were very strong diversification in every activity of the sports business, a little bit like doing IMG, but IMG have 40 years of history. Right. And Lagardere Sports, we have even not the time to integrate the team. So making work together, Sports 5 guys, colleagues, with a DNA of Sports 5, with a guy of IEC who have a totally different DNA, totally different focus, take time.
Yeah. Okay. And one last question I wanted to, before we move on, of course, to the next one here is, the strategy initially was clearly that to keep the names alive, right? So everyone was still operating out of Sport 5 and IC and World Sport, et cetera. And unless you knew about it, you didn't know that they were connected. And I've even kept hearing always that, they even still compete a bit with each other. Again, that seemed to be, I guess, a top level kind of decision. That's how they wanted to run it, right? Is that correct? Or
yeah, at this time, it was a reason, again, for a reason of integration, time to integrate. But ultimately, it was always in the mind that at some point,
you would merge
everybody should be under the same umbrella, Okay. But definitely, it was not possible. It's happened, but I think it was too early. Anyway, that's a decision that I will not comment at all, and I respect. Again, the shareholders are always right, even if they're wrong.
I love it. All right. Well, let's move on from there, because, as you said, you kind of left, I guess, when you felt, maybe that things weren't going the way you wanted it. And I guess you set up your own agency there for a period of time, right? Media Sports System.
Exactly.
Which then, of course, led into the next one. So talk us through that a little bit, the couple of years there. What happened?
Exactly. And I have to say that after my Eurosports time of freshness and youngness, this time of building my own small boutique as for the first time a full entrepreneur was a fantastic journey. A short one, obviously. Even if we will speak about CAA11, obviously, but it's also my own creation. But it was very exciting. And it was too short, unfortunately. It was only a year, but I spent a fantastic year, developing, going there and there, trying to get a strategy for the company. And it was a company, it was myself, it was an advisory company. I don't want to spend to invest, to take too many risks financially on that. So I have to work on the basis of advisory, but it was great. I get, and I will have to thank a few of my former colleagues or clients and partners who trust me, and who ask me, because they think that I can bring add value to their business, some advisory and some stuff like that. And it was only a year because, and we will jump on that, because thereafter I developed this project of CAA11, but it was a fantastic year, but again, I jumped that back for almost 6 years, 5 to 6 years. I was at Lagardere with a big visit card, business card, on my name with Lagardere, blah, blah, blah. And then the day after, you are nobody, you are yourself.
Yeah,
and I have
it's a little different world, that's for sure.
Even being yourself, something is fantastic. You don't need, you need to create value for your partner. That's the main question. People can be unclear, not sure, can trust you, but ultimately you need to bring some things to them, and this is the business as Discover and I love. This is the intermediation business, especially in the sports industry. But I have to say, I think it's the same in other industry. When you are advisor in big groups of advising and stuff, you need to bring some things that people have not. And
well, that leads nicely into CAA 11, because clearly you brought something there to CAA, which obviously is the big agencies from the US, where you partnered with them and of course created a new subsidiary, which went after a very, very big project. Now talk us through a little bit this whole time when that tender started, because again, I remember certain parts of it, but probably not everything. So we're now somewhere around 2012 here, I guess, right? 11, 12. Where UEFA decides to start, I guess, taking some of the rights again in-house or bundling them, whichever way you want to call it, right? Bringing all the qualifying for Europe is for the World Cup or other competitions together. And similar to the way team represents, I guess, UEFA on the club side, creating a structure for the national team side, right? That's sort of the simplest way for anyone who is not even familiar with what you guys are doing. How would you just, what was UEFA doing at that time, and what was the groundbreaking part to it?
Yeah, so you make a perfect summary of the situation. At this time, UEFA, because as you remember before that, the market of the rights for national team association, football, national team were very fragmented, fully fragmented. Yeah. Where you had players like Sports 5, like in France, who get a lot of rights of federation, for example, the Armenian Federation, the Moldova, and thereafter others, smaller or bigger federation. Yeah. And everything were based on the chance of the draw. Yeah. Because if you represent the Armenian Federation, and in the draw of the qualifiers, you draw England, you make the jackpot. You
got a golden ticket.
That's pretty how it works. Yep. And ultimately, it was fragmented, unclear, unsure in terms of revenue for the federation. Right. So UEFA, I think, cleverly decided to try to centralize those rights and to bring that back home to the UEFA organization. And I think it's one of the biggest moves UEFA have done since the beginning of the 90s with the centralization of the UEFA Cup and the Champions League, meaning historically the Cup of Champions, the Champions Cup. And at this time, UEFA decided, I think, very, very, very smart way to go to all their members federation and say, guys, you never know what you will get in the next couple of years because you don't know against whom you are playing. You know, and if you are selling those rights for cheap to an agency, if this agency is drawing England, all the money are going to the agency and you lose that.
Right.
So UEFA decided to centralize that, and with that, it was a long journey for UEFA, and I was outside of that because it was a UEFA purpose. Right. But I think
who was in UEFA? Who was driving it actually? What the names of who we talk about here? Who was pushing this?
Of the centralization, I will put 3 names on the table. It was Gianni Infantino at this time. So 4 names. Platini was driving that. Platini, Infantino, Theodoris, and Guy Laurent Epstein. That was the 4 guys really in the mix. Obviously, there were, I want to be fair with everybody, and a lot of people were working on that project. But those 4 guys were the cornerstone of the centralization. And with this centralization came to a point. Okay, fair enough. But who is going to distribute those rights? UEFA organization were well established in terms of marketing and sales, but not so big because you have team marketing dealing all the commercialization of for the Champions League at this time already. So UEFA only selling the Euro every 4 years. Okay, but and then UEFA decided to launch a tender to try to find a partner to distribute and to be the exclusive agent of the UEFA for those rights. Right. Exactly as you mentioned, like team marketing, same type of model. Right. So ultimately, at this time, I had a lot of experience in these activities thanks to Sports 5 IMG before. So I know a lot of things about that. And my partner and I, at this time, Olivier, we decided to try to create a small structure, just Olivier and I, to try to bid for those rights without any chance to win potentially, but with a chance that if things happening, it can work, And finally, very quickly, we see that it was too big for us. Alone, very difficult. But we see there is a lot of elements which were very interesting for a startup, a brand new company, because UEFA required a lot of elements, and there was a lot of obligation asked for UEFA. Not so easy for a classical agency to accept and to maintain. Like the exclusivity, for example, CAA 11, like team marketing, we are only working for UEFA. Right. That's big stuff. So okay, ask IMG or others to work only for that. So that's difficult. So we think that there was a very good window there. We know very product. We know very well the way to implement that, and we have a lot of ideas about the best way to implement that. Right. So we implemented that, but very quickly we see we were too small. So we try to find partner on the market. Obviously, it cannot be the usual suspect because the usual suspect didn't need us, or feel they didn't need us, neither IMG nor Sports 5 nor whatever. So ultimately, we try to make a kind of world tour, small one because we were alone, but to try to find partner. And finally, and again, we managed to have a very, very good meetings with the CAA people in Los Angeles, where they were starting to try to work outside of US and definitely in Europe. At this time, they just finished their partnership, their contractual relationship with Philippe Lefloc at this time and Peter Kenyon.
Yes, they had a team in the UK. That's right.
And I said none of them, neither Peter nor Philippe, were very happy about the relationship they have with CA and vice versa. Right. So there are not a lot of activities there. And what we've done, we say, guys, we don't want you to hire us, not at all. We propose you to be partner in this project. So your risk is zero. You don't have anybody in. You just have to fuel and to fuel the project on a short-term basis, on a 6 months or 3 months basis, and it's what they've done, and they've done properly. And CA bet on us, and they bring the image and all the know-how, the knowledge of the agency, the very well-known agency in the US, and we have the expertise of the market and of the business itself, of football media rights in particular and sponsorship rights. So we've done this team up in the mid 12 when the tender were launched. End of the first quarter 2012, and thankfully after a very, very long tender process, which I perfectly understand. Again, for UEFA it was such an important tender, because they were teaming up like they've done in '92 with team marketing, with a partner who are going to get in hand the jewel of the UEFA rights, So it was very important for them to take the time, and we run to I don't remember how many, but more than 3 or 4 rounds of bidding with. I think, I don't know exactly, but there were more than 15 bidders, Wow. And ultimately we finished in the final, I will say in final round, with 2 usual suspects, my former company, IMG and Lagardere.
Right, okay.
So, but that's life, you know how it is, and ultimately, what we think were an advantage for us finally has been a very great advantage. Is we were a startup and a brand new company, because CA have other business, but they have no business in football, and at this time. So for UEFA, it was very, very clear that we are going to build around Olivier and I a company totally dedicated and create for this project. And for UEFA, it was crucial, So thankfully, we get those rights. And in the end of the summer 2012, we get the confirmation by UEFA that we are starting. And it was already very late because we were trying to start to sell rights starting in 2014. And as you know, when you are selling rights, TV rights or even sponsorship rights, the run is long, in order to sell everything everywhere in the world. So that was a fantastic.
I love that. Let me go back just for a minute before we then go a little, of course, into now what happened almost the last, let's say, 10 years, a little less than 10 years almost now, since obviously you've been involved in this. Now, at the time, again, these are some numbers I remember. We're dealing with at least somewhere. It was in the ballpark of $1 billion, if not more, for the guarantee. So the first block was a 4-year block, was it? Sort of
yes.
Yeah, it was 4-year window for, I guess, all the usual rights from Euro to all the qualifiers, etc. Right. So your first season was what, 2014 to 2018, or was that what you said? Yeah. Okay.
The first inventory, the first portfolio was all the rights from between 14 and 18.
Right. Got it. And again, if you go back. So if you go back now, think about when you won. As I said, now it's 10 years ago. What do you think was the linchpin? Was it you guys put more money on the table than everyone else? Was it the combo of, as you said earlier, that you were a standalone agency versus the others? Obviously, you were doing a bunch of other stuff. What do you really think was what made the difference at the end?
I think clearly the money were not the problem, because there was a key element that we perfectly integrate into our bid, where that UEFA wants to keep the full control. And if you want to keep the full control, your priority is to generate the much money you can, but ultimately you cannot ask for a full control and have a guarantee outside.
Right.
So you know the story. If you buy out the rights or if you put a large guarantee, you need to have control of things.
Right.
And for us, it was obvious that UEFA wants to keep the control of the operation,
Right.
being able to reject or accept or move ahead on.
Right.
In the meantime, UEFA wants to be protected by an agency and helped by an agency regarding to create a Chinese wall between the market and UEFA to protect the rights and the rights holder, and ultimately the rights holder are the federation.
Yeah.
And I have to say that thanks to the dynamic of the market, thanks to the way we have done so, and thanks to the help of UEFA, but it was a fantastic success because it's exactly UEFA have a full control, a full visibility of what you are doing. We are in permanent link with UEFA, and ultimately, CAA 11 is a spin-off of UEFA.
Right.
It's an integrate, almost an integrate agency in UEFA.
Right.
Even if UEFA are not shareholder of CAA 11, not at all. But that's why I think the success of those elements has been to be able to mix the results, the commercial results, and the transparency and the control kept by the rights holder. Yeah. And finally, as you mentioned, one of the key elements were that in order to get the full control of that, they want that we are working only for UEFA. Yeah. And it was a big choice for us because it means that our development is totally related and depending on UEFA properties.
And because it's so large, in that case, it's justifiable. At the same way, team obviously done very well with just doing Champions League. It's a multi-billion-dollar property. Exactly. So in the same way here, it's not a small thing you're betting on. So I can see that. Now again, you answer what you can answer here. In terms of your sort of deal structure, it might have changed over the years a bit anyway. But so is there some sort of a MG which you guys putting on the table? Which you then have to, you make your money beyond, or how is it roughly structured?
No, on that I cannot answer to your question. You can understand easily why. Okay, I don't want to go deep in the structure of the deal. What I can say is the structure of our deal are very close to the structure of the deal that any other agency could have made. We know that for sure. So ultimately, the decision were much more not on these elements, but much more on what we are bringing up outside. And again, awesome. The fact that we are working only for them, the fact that we are giving them full transparency in the stuff. So ultimately, I will be very humble on that. We didn't create some things totally new. We have replicated what is working very well with UEFA and team marketing.
That makes sense. And the success speaks for itself, right? You mentioned earlier, you've done three renewals now, right? You've obviously had your first cycle, second cycle, which you're currently finishing in 2022, and you mentioned earlier you've just extended till all the way to 2028, so your third cycle. So that speaks itself. Clearly you've done an amazing job there for UEFA, and they like working with you guys, right?
But again, it's also the cooperation and the link between UEFA and us. And I think it's difficult to explain because you know perfectly how it works between agency and rights holder. Until it works, you have a fluidity, but it's difficult to be every day on the back of the agency and vice versa. And I have to say that UEFA have implemented an organization, and we have implemented an organization which is working very well. Obviously, at the beginning, some of the employees were UEFA employees who joined us, and some were coming from elsewhere and whatever. So we have to make this integration that I mentioned last time, which is very important, integration and implementation. And it worked well because we take the time to do that properly. Even if we have a lot of things to do, we try to implement and to establish a DNA of the company as close as possible to what UEFA were looking for, obviously. Right. And with that, ultimately, I have to say it's working well. I don't say we are successful everywhere on every tender, but there is a trust which is created between the two, which ultimately, we don't have to make thousands of meetings of hours. We do it, but we know each other. We know how UEFA is reacting. UEFA know how we are working. It doesn't mean that they are not controlling that. They are controlling very well. They are validate everything, but it's working well.
Absolutely. Let's dig a bit around there. I mean, I want to talk a bit about some of the new formats which you guys obviously created, and I guess the other part, which I'm not sure we mentioned it specifically, but you also you don't just control the media rights, right? You have, of course, you're selling the sponsorship packages as well, which again was a different thing than it was obviously previously done, and then we'll obviously talk about Euro 2020, 2021 here and the challenges in there. But let's stick for a minute here on the, some of the new things which came with this new package, right? There came the Nations Cup.
Nations League. Nations League.
Nations League, sorry. What do I call it? Nations League.
I know there is so many leagues and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But it's
the Nations League.
League. Yeah.
Now, how would you? Again, the simple description. Of course, it was a new. It was literally in a new competition to some degree to take a bit away the, I guess, the friendly matches, right? To turn the friendly matches into something a bit more meaty and more meaningful and so on. But and I have to correct me if I'm wrong. How many Nations Leagues have we had now? 2 seasons of it, or only 1?
No, we have we have only 1 season.
It's only happened once, right? Correct. Yeah. And I think Portugal is the one who won, right?
It was a fantastic success. And again, we start by a question: how can we manage to optimize and make those match from national team more exciting for everybody, right? Not only for the fans, but also for the players, for the coach and so on.
Right.
And the answer is that all matches need to count. Right. We need every matches needs to have a physical an interest. Is it a qualification? Is it giving some point? Is it bringing you in another? And it's why we're working hard with UEFA and UEFA department. As you know, UEFA they have a strong sports competition department working on that. But the first question were, what are we doing with these friendly matches? Half of the matches of national team were at this time friendly matches,
right.
And it didn't work. Right. When you play a friendly matches, it's never a competition match, right. And none of the players, none of the coaches, none of the federation, none of the fans wants to see any more friendly matches. Okay, they can watch friendly matches pre-World Cup, pre-Euros, right, for the preparation, because the interest is to see how your teams are going to play in this big competition. But ultimately, exactly, and ultimately that's exactly that. We were lucky enough to have a very strong team already established at CAA 11 and working very hard with a strong team, and we made a fantastic session of brainstorming to try to see how can we manage to mitigate the negative impact of friendly matches in the overall package.
Was that already part of what you had pitched as when you were pitching, or that came later?
Yeah, at the beginning it was only official matches. Right, okay. And for the first cycle, we had only qualifiers matches, meaning you World Cup and
so this
Euro
was a new invention later, right? So, okay, got it.
So again, as you mentioned, the development of the company, we are bringing from 10 match from 5 matches from 10 matches. Let's keep globally from 700 matches per cycle to per seasons to 1,500 matches per season.
Right.
So,
wow,
so and the idea was to structure, reorganize the calendar. Obviously, today it's difficult for me to go deeper than that, but because today there is a lot of discussion about the calendar post 24, is the story about the World Cup every 2 years and stuff like that, which hopefully will not happen, because I think it's diluting the value of football. But that's another story. But ultimately, the key element of this creation were, how can we create some things which is better for everybody? And I think we manage it It's not perfect. It was the first season, but it went very well. It was very well received by partner. Is it media, but also a sponsor? Because ultimately you get some things. You have a year of competition, and with a year of competition, you get qualified for a Final Four. Right. Or tomorrow will be perhaps a Final 8. And this Final Four last time we are playing Portugal, and it was a fantastic event. Finally won by Portugal, but it's sports. but it was great, and ultimately you have the next Final Four played in Milano, in Torino, in beginning of October this year, and you have a semi-final which is Italy-Spain, and another semi-final which is France-Belgium. So that's a fantastic and big teams. In that. You have the big team playing each other, but ultimately for the smaller team, it's also very competitive because they can. It's why the name is Nations League. You can accede and be promoted in the next division.
That's right. There are different layers of it. I remember that. Yeah.
And I think it's working pretty well. It's totally complementary to the qualifiers. And it's working well. So that's an innovative. I have to say that we were part of those discussions, obviously. But again, it was driven by UEFA, and each time we are discussing about commercial impact, we are in the mix. Obviously.
Yeah, I would imagine, right? I mean, at the end of the day, besides that, it makes, from a sporting point of view, makes sense, like the way you explained it already. There's always, I'm sure, the underlying commercial element as well, right? How would that generate more revenue streams by being more structured, by giving it a new name? So it's not just a friendly, but now it is the Nations League, and it has a new ring to it, and it brings in new companies and sponsors. So would you say it also has been commercially successful, not just from a sporting point of view? I think it's easy, like you said, but it also generated new revenue for UEFA and the teams.
Yeah, because ultimately, you manage to sell. It's easiest, and you can sell better matches which is official than a friendly matches.
Yeah.
So
makes
we come to
sense.
a broadcaster, instead of selling half friendly matches and half official matches, we're selling almost only official matches. So that's a big change.
Yeah.
So that, for sponsor, it's also a big jump, because ultimately the sponsor were partner of what? They were partner of the Euro every 4 years. Yeah. Sometimes a little bit partner, and it's what we create also, partner of the qualifiers, part of the qualifiers, but it's very complex. I don't want to enter into that, because in certain countries it's available, in others it's not. But ultimately they are also partner of the Final Four of the Nations League. And for them, it's a way to meet with their clients, and to meet with their overall stakeholders, and to develop the relationship around that. So yes, it's successful. It's on a sports basis, it's successful. On a commercial basis, it's successful. And hopefully, it's now, and I have not a crystal ball now. Hopefully, the reorganization of the calendar post 24 will help to reinforce this stuff. But who knows? Because post 24, there is so many questions about what's going on. We speak about the World Cup every 2 years. We speak about whatever, obviously the World Cup with 48 teams is some things, and so this is some things we are monitoring carefully. We are working with UEFA carefully, but definitely UEFA is on the case, and UEFA have now create and develop with this centralization of the national team, a little bit like they've done in the 90s for the clubs. Yeah. A very, very efficient machine, and an organization and structure, So UEFA doesn't let that goes, and wants to protect that, because ultimately that's not for UEFA. All these money are going back to the federation.
It's a money-making machine you guys have built there. I can see that. Now let's talk a bit about Euro 2020 happening in 2021. We got maybe another sort of 10-15 minutes here before we wrap it up. And of course, it's an obvious to ask and talk a bit about it, right? It was already a challenging event anyway, right? Because it was, I guess, the 100th anniversary, or was it the 100th anniversary?
Oh, 60.
Oh, 60, sorry, the 60th anniversary. And, it was hosted all across the region. And all of a sudden we got COVID here, right? So never mind, it got delayed. but it was still obviously played under, very, very difficult circumstances. Now, being inside of this, and, even though you're not involved in the operation as much, but you are obviously involved in the commercial side of it, having to deal with broadcasters and sponsors and everyone, I'm sure, are freaking out to some degree of what's happening here. Tell us a bit about it. I mean, how are you dealing with that?
First of all, I want to say that we were as a partner very, very impressed about the way that UEFA have managed that. Everybody in March 2020 were a little bit scared about what can happen, not only for our business, but everywhere with this pandemic,
Yep.
And we have to say that UEFA has been one of the first to postpone the Euro 20 and take the slot of the June 21 to make this happen.
Right.
And ultimately, after that, you can say it was a very great decision, a clever decision and quick and fast decision. Yep. And thereafter, it's not only that, but UEFA have made everything possible to mitigate all the impact of these changes and all the impact of the crisis. And when I say mitigate, is meaning you need to renegotiate with all the cities, hosting city. You need to renegotiate with all the NAs. You need to try to reschedule or rebuild the scheduling for the qualifiers, for the matches and whatever. Yeah. And ultimately, the outcome of that has been that thanks to UEFA, I think there were only two. I think it's only 2 matches which was cancelled because of the pandemics. All the other were played.
That's it.
One way or the other. What it is amazing, huh? Yeah. But obviously there were a lot of discussion with broadcaster and sponsor. But ultimately, UEFA deliver what they sell,
everything,
and what they propose to the partner.
In a delayed way.
It was and again, the Euro 2020 play in 21 were the first event play with the fan back in the stadium, and it was fantastic. It was fresh air. It wasn't perfect, obviously, everywhere, but if you can imagine the difficulties to manage and coordinate a Euro in 12 different countries or 10 different countries around Europe, with all the regulation and the sanitary regulation different in those countries, this is amazing,
It's a massive undertaking, and I take my head off for sure.
For the operational people, especially UEFA people, but also our team, it was a little bit frustrating because obviously Euro is a big event, is a big fete. It's something which is it's a celebration, and obviously with all these we were not able to celebrate that properly with all the stakeholders, with the partner, with the clients, with broadcaster, sponsor, and it was difficult. But we have UEFA and our team have mitigated the impact of this crisis as much as possible. And I have to say that it worked well. It worked well, and everybody we get already a lot of feedback from is it broadcaster or partner sponsors. And they were very happy because it was an end of the tunnel for them also, marketing direction of a big company, partner of Euro. It was their first event that they've done for a year almost, So that was a great success. That was a big success of audiences. And ultimately, I think UEFA have respect every stakeholders in these means, try to mitigate and to manage all the impact for every people, including teams, partner, fans, and others. So that's a great success. Now it's on our back. And due to the postponing of this Euro 21, and now we are looking very quickly to the...
Exactly. You got a little shorter window for the next one.
Obviously, there is this World Cup 22 play in Qatar, which is something which is out of our scope, obviously. Yeah. But it's obviously very important for us because obviously with the change of scheduling with the World Cup play in November, it changed a lot of the scheduling, so it have an impact on us. Yeah. But I have to say we are full speed on Euro 24 in Germany, and I have to say, what we say, football is coming on. I know it's
exactly.
We said that for England, but we can say that for Germany, and the success. The historical success of the World Cup 2006, yes. We are so excited to be able to come in Germany to do Limassol, and we know how big it will be. We know that,
and I will be there too. I'll book my ticket now for you.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, no, I can't wait. 2006 was
I will
amazing.
let you know, Marcus.
Let you know. Thank you. Put me on the list. Absolutely. No, that's fantastic, and I absolutely. I could spend another hour probably talking about that, but we won't do that. But yes, I'm very excited over it as well. I think Germany as a team hasn't had their best couple of years here, but I do think in 2024 we should be back up there. I think we're with our new coach. Looks like we're doing well there, so it'll be exciting to see the team.
Strong new players.
Exactly. Yeah, we always have good young guys coming, and let's see if they can get ready, right? But that doesn't mean there aren't others who equally looking strong, and it's an exciting time for football as usual. Now, to kind of wrap it up here, maybe let's talk a little bit about the changing in media. And you're a media man, right? You've been there since the beginning. We talked about it earlier. How the pay TV world started. And working in Eurosport and Canal Plus, and now. Again, I want to be specific to UEFA and whatever you can share again in terms of your plans. Everyone is going into OTT. You're going, NFTs are popping up everywhere, and that's maybe a bit more of a side thing, probably comparatively. But OTT is obviously a large, important play. Great example would be here. I was in Thailand here, as I mentioned, for the last year. So I watched the Euro here. And my understanding is that you guys did a pretty late deal here, right? It was actually sponsored by a local company, like the day before it started, I think. I was a bit worried how to watch it here. And at the beginning, I saw, at least when I was trying to figure out how to watch it, is there was an app, right? There was a UEFA app, I think as it was called. But I could never quite work out whether it would show live matches or not, or it was just highlights. What is your strategy there, right? For markets where one day maybe you might not find a sponsor anymore, or a broadcaster anymore, right? Because of whatever reason, they're all different in different parts of the world. You have strategies to go direct to consumer, or what are you guys looking to do?
Okay, so let's say that today the strategy of UEFA is to try to maintain the relationship with existing partner. Mm-hmm. Is it broadcaster or new OTT player?
Right.
But because again, UEFA is a sports governing body. Yeah. It's not a broadcaster. The goal of UEFA is not to create a big monster of the broadcasting and so on. So ultimately, the first strategy is to try to monitor properly and to work with partners who are in the media landscape. So obviously, the new OTT player, is it the Amazon, the Apple, the Netflix, which Netflix are not doing sports, but DAZN and others. Yeah. That's our clients, and we love them. We continue to work with, let's say, historical traditional network or broadcaster. Yeah. Having said that, obviously we are not blind, and I cannot speak about UEFA itself, but just can give you what UEFA is doing, because again, this is not CAA 11 strategy, this is UEFA strategy. Right. And UEFA strategy has been to develop a kind of apps / OTT platform / website, whatever you will name that, mm-hmm. which is able to compensate and replace a partner which is not here, for example. Mm-hmm. For a lot of time, and especially in the past years, we have a situation where the business model of the historical broadcaster, is it network, cable and satellite company or others, mm-hmm. has been tackled and challenged by new players like OTT platforms. Right. But in the meantime, in the same times, the loss of revenues or potential loss of revenues of this traditional operator went directly to the new players. And the new players have not yet established their own strategy about sports. Correct. And sports in particular. So obviously UEFA have to mitigate those periods which I think this period is now over. And to try to be able to propose and to establish, because outside of bringing money to federation in Europe and to clubs, UEFA, the mission of UEFA is also to develop the sports in Europe, and also in order to develop that, to have the best exposure for that.
Right.
So typically, the example of Thailand, at one point, UEFA were about this time, if the last-minute deal were not happen, to broadcast on its own platforms the Euro on its own. We have done so not with Euro, with main matches, but UEFA have done so with youth competition, for example. We didn't find anymore, very difficult to find a partner which is broadcasting that because of budget are shrinking and stuff like that, and it's not anymore premium rights and whatever. Even if it's coming back a little bit, because there is a needs of content and on sport content, live sports more and more. So that's an evolution, permanent evolution. And in order to be able to fulfill that whole, I will say, UEFA have developed these apps / between you and me, for us, it's much more a tool and an option than a real competition to the partner.
Right. The
idea is not to extract premium rights from that and to put that on a full OTT platform. Not at all. That's not as of today.
Right.
And I speak of control, and I cannot say, but it's what we have been. We understand from UEFA. This is not that, but it's just a way to try to mitigate a hole or a problem in certain regions, certain country where UEFA properties are not properly broadcast, or where partners are not supporting those competition strongly enough. I can give you an example of some competition where people say, I just want to broadcast the semi-final and the final.
Right.
Say yes.
Yeah, actually, I watched the Euro under 21. I was watching it on the app, and obviously you in Germany did well there, so I was watching a couple of the matches, and so it was great. Yeah, I enjoyed that, and I figured maybe this is how I would be going to watching the Euro too, but luckily it was ended up on proper network TV here.
Ultimately, there is obviously an obligation of a proper mix between exposure and money, and ultimately, the monetization of those rights on UEFA platform or on any platform at the moment are not. It's not. You need to make the promotion. You need to do everything, and it's not really easy. So that's it. And again, when a partner is taking over rights for their own network, is it a classical broadcaster on an OTT or an OTT platform, they are also gaining some things where you cannot have with UEFA, because you have UEFA proper OTT, is the IP of the rights. And you know perfectly that a broadcaster, when you get the rights of UEFA, is it Champions League or national team football, is making a big promotion of that, and he's using the IP of UEFA / the national team football in order to promote that on his own network. So and that's a very important part of the value of those rights.
I have one last question for you here, Stephane.
Yes.
A little bit crystal balling here, right? And because you mentioned it earlier, you said you think maybe this period of I know there was definitely rights fees were going down or were a bit distressed in many parts of the world because of new players coming in, but they're not really picking up the pieces yet. The revenue models were shifting. Do you feel that has really passed and going forward now there is an upwards trend, or what is it your general perception? And this is really on a global scale, right? Not just Europe, even though where Europe is of course the stronghold because of naturally where the teams are, but UEFA the Euro is really a global property, right? You can watch it anywhere in the world. What's your thought on that? What do you see there looking in the next, 5 or 10 years going out here?
Okay, first of all, thankfully, UEFA and C11 are working on very premium properties,
yes.
Like Euro, like national team football in your national country. So typically on that, I have to say that these, as you say, these small hole or these downgrade or discounting of the rights have not really happened. Mm-hmm. Premium properties are strongly resisting, even continuing to growing against obviously smaller properties which are traded very strongly. So that's the first thing. To answer your question on a general basis, I think the switch of business model, which is not finally done yet totally, from a traditional broadcaster to OTT, but traditional broadcasters adapt themselves. If you look about ESPN in the US, with ESPN Plus, they are both an OTT players and a traditional broadcaster. As an example, and all of them are going in this way. You know, the Discovery, HBO, you have now that. So ultimately, I think the numbers of properties around the world which are attractive are not growing like hell. But the numbers of people who wants to integrate to jump on this market are bigger and bigger. So to answer your question, I think the past 10 years or 5 years were a period of instability about those the OTT are going to replace the traditional broadcaster. And the answer now is clearly no. It's not going to replace. It's going to carve out whole or to carve out stuff and potentially to take over some major position of traditional broadcaster. But you know, the stronger broadcaster, you know, like we name Disney with ESPN, or we can name you know, a few others like Sky and others, are not going to disappear at all. They are just today continuing to reorganize their business model in a way which is in the right way of the evolution of the market. And I have to say, I think you know, there is some type of rights which cannot go you know, but at the roof. But in the meantime, there is so many, you know, you cannot imagine so many discussions we have with new players around our properties. It's amazing. It's amazing. You know, but historically we have a discussion with 2 or 3 players on a market. We were happy if we have 3 players in order to have a strong battle. Today we have a strong discussion with 5 to 6 to 8 players. Wow. You know, and all of them are very aggressive, and all of them have big shareholder on the back. And some of them, it's also the evolution of the you know, we everybody speak about Amazon, about DAZN and stuff like that. But on the back you have the Apple, you have all these other players who are watching very carefully that. Doesn't mean that they are going to jump on that, you know, but today, but they are monitoring. They have teams, they're spending a lot of time and money on that. So having said that, I think you know, I think there is more and more stabilization and reorganization of the market, but I'm not very scared about the evolution of those for a simple reason. Sports is live. Live is rare, and rarity is gold or diamond. So, and for them, you know, and I'm amazed, and I'm the first supporter of watching the Casa del Papel on Netflix and whatever. But first of all, everybody should know that it's a lot of money to build this type of brand and this type of IP. Secondly, when you are creating that, nobody knows if it works. When today in sports, when you broadcast the Euro or the World Cup or the Olympics, you don't know exactly, but you gain millions and millions of viewers, and sometimes billions, like the Euro, which have overpassed the 5 billion viewers during the last Euro. So you can imagine the power of those brands. In the, and it's perhaps one of the last elements which are federate everybody. You know, everybody you remember the last time you watched the final of German team and the winning team in 14. You remember perfectly where you were, with whom you were. And I think that's for me, that's the power of sports, and in particular of premium sports. So again, you know, but we are very humble and careful and monitoring that very carefully. But I'm not pessimistic at all, even the opposite of the evolution of that, you know. Perhaps we will change clients, perhaps we will change partner, ultimately UEFA and the Euro or other big properties will always find the right partner.
Find a home. Yeah. No, and I would agree with that. I think and it's great to hear of someone like yourself who's so deep in this, of course, and sees these conversations. And as you said, that it's gone broader. I think that's also a great sign, right? That it's no longer just the 2 or 3 main broadcasters, but there are many other platforms now who you would be bringing into the conversation. And competition is always what drives our industry, right? At the end of the day, that's what drives rights up fees and keeps the numbers stable. So awesome. Stéphane, I think this was amazing. I think we had a amazing journey here through your career, and of course, hearing really some great insight into UEFA and your relationship as CAA as their main agent for all their national team activities and how it works and how you guys work closely together and how you guys pulled off this amazing Euro 2021. So, first of all, congratulations on all that, and second of all, thank you for sharing. It was awesome. I enjoyed it.
No, thanks to you and thanks to you because I think it's a very interesting exercise even for me and for everybody. And again, thanks for hosting that very professionally and thanks for your help to help me to drive him back in my memory.
Yeah.
Not every day easy. And again, I hope to see you very soon physically.
Definitely. Hopefully, exactly. Either in Switzerland or somewhere in Paris or London soon.
Exactly.
Absolutely.
Hopefully. Okay. Thanks a lot, Marcus. And
thank you, Stéphane.
Okay.
See you soon.
Bye.
Bye.
The Sports Entrepreneurs by Marcus Luer podcasts are a collection of interviews and stories. All content in this podcast is the copyright of Marcus Luer. Reproduction and distribution of the presentation without written permission of the owner is prohibited. All rights reserved.